we have our sell side liquidity here. Sell side liquidity, and at this point here as well, we have our buy side liquidity there. Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And in today's video, I want to basically do a quick analysis on GBP USD, and I'll try as much as possible to make it pretty much simple so that we can basically know what we are going to position ourselves for in this new week. So this is GBP USD daily time frame, and I want you guys to pay attention to this analysis. You can agree with me that on the daily time frame we are basically bullish. The obvious trend on the daily time frame is bullish, and I identify a break of structure at this level here. There's a break of structure at that level, and this area here, we have our sell side liquidity here. Sell side liquidity, and at this point here as well, we have our buy side liquidity there. Our buy side liquidity. So from the daily time frame now, we now have a range which we can basically work with. So if you guys understand the concept of internal range liquidity and external range liquidity, this is basically what we are going to be using in doing this analysis. So the sell side liquidity and the buy side liquidity happens to be our external range liquidity, and within the external range liquidity there's always an internal range liquidity like fair value gap or an order block. So now on the daily time frame, we now have a range. We have capped this price action inside of the sell side liquidity and the buy side liquidity. So now price took out external range liquidity by giving us this break of structure to the upside. So our expectation is for price to come inside of the external range liquidity, and as you can see on this daily time frame, we have external range liquidity at this point, a fair value gap at this point, and also we have another fair value gap and internal range liquidity at this point as well. So now my expectation is for price to come inside of this internal range liquidity or this other internal range liquidity before we are going to see a further push to the upside to take out the buy side liquidity on the daily time frame. So now we now have a bias already. So if basically we want to be a patient trader, we are going to wait for price to come inside of this internal range liquidity, aka fair value gap, or this imbalance which I have identified on the daily time frame. But majority of us, or majority of people watching this video, may basically be an impatient trader. They just basically want to trade. So since you already have a bias that you want price to come inside of this internal range liquidity, you can basically be looking for opportunity on the lower time frame to short, which is to go for a short entry like a sell to inside of this internal range liquidity which we have identified on this daily time frame. So now let's go to the 4-hour time frame and see what market is basically doing on the 4-hour time frame. Don't forget, we have our internal range liquidity which we have identified from the daily time frame, And on the 4-hour time frame, I saw something interesting, and that is basically I saw price respecting this fair value gap here. You can see price is basically respecting this fair value gap. Let me zoom in so that you guys can see. So you can see price is basically respecting this fair value gap. So we may basically, if we want to take our trade from the 4-hour time frame, since we have seen this rejection of this fair value gap, we may basically take our short entry from that point. Our stop loss will be above this high, and from there we may target inside of this internal range liquidity which we have identified from the daily time frame. That is if we want to trade on the 4-hour time frame. So if we don't want to trade on the 4-hour time frame, we can basically go to the 1-hour time frame and look for opportunity to trade. And as you can see, we also have price trying to respect this 1-hour fair value gap also. You can see, as at last week when price closed, price was basically respecting this 1-hour fair value gap. So probably when price opens, we may look for opportunity to go short from this point here with our stop loss above here, or basically above here, just like we have identified on the 4-hour time frame. And what is going to be our target? Our target will be, our target will be the internal range liquidity which we have identified from the daily time frame. And don't forget, our bias is for price to come inside of this internal range liquidity which we have identified on the daily time frame. And if we find our confirmation inside of any of this internal range liquidity for a buy, then we'll definitely take our buy. And what's going to be our target? Our target is going to be this buy side liquidity which we have identified on the daily time frame. And this is the end of my conclusion of analysis on GBP USD. Like I have said, let's go back to the daily time frame. We are expecting price to come inside of this internal range liquidity, any of the two. If we find our confirmation there, we'll definitely take a buy and target the daily buy side liquidity. So that is the bias. But if you don't want to wait until price gets inside of the internal range liquidity on the daily time frame, then you can basically be doing what we call counter trading. You already know that when price gets inside of this daily internal range liquidity, you want to look for opportunity to go long. But pending when the price will get inside of the internal range liquidity, you can basically counter trade. For as much as you want to buy, you can still counter trade for a sell until price gets inside of the internal range liquidity which we have identified on the daily time frame. And that is where you will now start to be careful on your selling entries. And I have come to the end of the analysis on GBP USD, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.